We've already discussed Darren Rizzi as a possible candidate for the Saints head coaching job. Let's move on to the next name on the list Buffalo offensive coordinator, Joe Brady. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. So, before we get into discussing any of the actual potential candidates for the Saints job, um, little disclaimer first. I'm going to clip this segment in front of every video we do on the before we get in and start talking about the head coaches. So if you've seen it before in a previous video, I always have the chapters. You can go ahead and hit the next chapter and skip right past this. But I think it's important to have a few minute conversation on where do you start when you're looking for the head coaching job. And already this conversation has come up in various places, not only in this channel, but other channels that I watch. I was in a live stream the other night as a not as a participant, as an audience member. And a lot of people were just throwing their, you need an offensive coordinator, you need a defense coordinator, you need this guy, that. And I'm sitting here going, there's a lot of merit to what they're saying, but I'm like, we're putting the cart before the horse. Before you start deciding all that kind of stuff, to my mind, what you have to do is make sure you have a guy who is capable of being an NFL head coach. Then you can start looking at the rest of that stuff. Classic example are coordinators who are great coordinators, but crappy head coaches. We just went through that. You want the real classic example, go back a couple of decades and let's talk about North Turner. A lot like DA. It's a good offensive coordinator for a couple of different teams, but a horrible head coach for a couple of different teams. So look, all I'm saying is, and this is the kind of stuff as fans, we're not really going to know. So as we progress through this and start talking about some of the potential candidates, I am under the assumption this part has been handled by the front office. They've got this part figured out because now they've had a glaring example in the last couple of years of what not to do, so that when we start discussing names, we'll be okay. And I just like jotted down some things like if I was in the room that I would be very interested in knowing either before the candidate walks in the room or asking the tough questions to figure out if he's got the right answers. And one of the biggest thing is can he make tough decisions? Is he willing to make the tough decisions? Is he willing to make the call? Putting himself out there could be a total failure, but it doesn't matter. A bunch of bad decisions will get him fired because a bunch of bad decisions are a bunch of bad decisions. There's no getting around that. But every now and then, when you make a bad decision in the best interest of the team, if you're the coach that is a leader that has everybody on board following you, when that bad decision comes, they know he was still trying to win. We're all trying to win. It didn't work out. We're okay with that. There's examples all around the NFL of great Super Bowl winning coaches doing stuff like that. You make, like I said, you make too many, then you're going to lose the team. But what loses the team faster, and sometimes I feel like this may have been DA's biggest problem, is just don't make any decisions at all, which leads to massive problems. Nature of pours a vacuum. So in the absence of the guy who's supposed to be the leader not making decisions to lead the organization, somebody else is going to have to do it. That's how you get into the situation that even when he makes a decision, nobody really pays attention. So you ask him, hey, can we let this guy score a touchdown? No, kneel the ball. It goes off anyway. You get where I'm going with this. Look, whoever comes in has got to be able to build a culture. And I would say normally fix the culture, but that's part of it. But I think you have some good, you have some bad, but I think the foundation needs to be reworked at the very least. And let's go ahead and build it back from the ground up. He's got to be able to be a fighter. We've seen the difference just in 3 games. And look, I'm not just talking about in the game itself, but um, press conferences. At times, he's going to have to fight and push back against the guys asking questions and not want to keep trying to be their friends. At times, he's going to have to deal with his bosses in the front office and be able to fight and push back against those guys saying, look, this roster you handed me is crap. We've got to make some changes for next year if not right now, and do something. Because you've put me in a position where it's making it very difficult to win. But we can make some changes on the roster that can help us out. Maybe that's the same fight you have to make on draft day when the head of player personnel and the scouting department all coming in and banging for your guy. And as the head coach, you're like, no. This is the culture we're bringing, the scheme we're bringing. These are the type of players we need. When it comes to pulling between 2 guys, that's our guy. Doesn't matter if you have him rated 1 spot higher. That's the guy we need. That's the better fit. That's the guy that's going to help us win more football games than him. You may be right, you may be wrong. But you can't be passive about it or passive aggressive about it later when people are calling you on it. So we had a really good example of what bad leadership as a head coach looks like. I'm hoping the organization learned its lesson. And if they haven't, I'm hoping they can go, I don't know, figure it out and find the right people to explain it to them the right way of going, look, you need to have a really good idea before they walk in the room. The X's and the O's things are great. But if he can't lead the team, push him forward, or actually just lead him forward, they should follow if he's really good at his job. Hold him accountable, identify problems, come up with solutions, implement them, fix it. If it doesn't work, change it. Make sure everybody's on board, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot of the same conversations we were having for most of this year. It's got to come out. It's got to be decided by the front office. And it's the conversation that has to be had and decided on with the list of names going, they're strong leadership candidates. Once we get those, now let's start making our decisions on X's and O's. Do we want to go offense, defense? Do we want, as I call a CEO coach, think of a John Harbaugh or Darren Rizzi coming from the special team side? However it works out. But you got to make damn sure you're bringing a leader into this leadership position and not just retreading somebody off a tree, not just going, hey, he calls great plays and they gain lots of yards or they have the best defense. Fine and dandy if he can bring that stuff with him. But if he can't bring the stuff we were just talking about before that, none of that crap's going to matter because he's still going to have a hard time leading the team, winning football games, and trying to get you back to the promised land of the playoffs and a Super Bowl run. Real quick, before we talk about the next head coach, I got to roll a fun fact because while I was doing research on this, it just popped up into my head. I'm like, in 58 Super Bowls, how many Super Bowl winning coaches were never an offensive or defensive coordinator on the NFL level? Pop it down in the comments if you've got a guess. Of the 58 Super Bowl winning coaches, now keep in mind some coaches have repeated multiple times. How many of them weren't NFL offensive or defensive coordinators? The answer is 10. And those 10 won a total of 15 Super Bowls between them. And they stretch all the way back to Weeb Eubank, who's the head coach of Super Bowl III, which was played before I was even born. Hank Stram, John Madden, they each had a win. Tom Flores had 2, and that's kind of I don't really remember the first 3 as coaches. I remember Madden as an announcer. I do remember Flores. Mike Ditka had 1. Jimmy Johnson has 2. Barry Switzer has 1. And you kind of like, hey, man, that's like the 90s and not even into the 2000s or barely into the 2000s. Right. The game's changed a lot since then. But then Tom Coughlin had 2. And of course, John Harbaugh being the prime example has one. And you're like, well, that was even like a decade ago. Absolutely. But the recent example is actually Andy Reid, who's got three. So if you guess 10 coaches and 15 Super Bowl wins between those 10, and basically spanning all eras, going from Super Bowl 3 to Super Bowl 58, there is a hodgepodge to say that you don't necessarily have to be an offensive or defensive coordinator. Obviously, most of the Super Bowl winning coaches were, but there's a path that you don't necessarily have to go that route. So pulling up the list of, and this is the Monday after we lost to the Rams, the current odds for basically the potential next head coach of the New Orleans Saints, and Joe Brady still leading at plus 300. Kind of whatever that means, I don't know, but it is what it is. Um, so assuming what we talked about in the first segment, he has all the kind of intangible leadership qualities, the ability to come in and build culture correctly, help structure the team, lead, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then we got to start looking at the actual what's he bringing to the table. And in his case, as an offensive guy and an OC currently in Buffalo, I mean, that's pretty much what you're going to look at. Last week, I don't remember if it was on the live stream or in one of the comments in the video. One of the members here, Northern, saying, flat out asked, why is Joe Brady the favorite? And my comment at the time was, I don't really know. Not really a handicapper, but it's a valid question. Why is this guy in front of some of the other names, especially like Ben Johnson, for this job? And as a caveat, I read an article on SI that he opened up as basically plus 300 for the Chicago job when Eberflus was fired a few days ago. So he seems to be the super hot name right now. Went ahead and said, well, let's create a kind of a resume for him and see if we can, figure out kind of what this is all about. Oh, by the way, the SI articles from November 30th, Kyle Salagi, I think that's how he pronounces his last name. My best guess anyway. But yeah, kind of recapping that. Hey, look, he's the favorite for the Bears job. He's still marked as the favorite for the Saints job. I guess he's the favorite for the Jets job. I didn't really look. When you go back and look, he was a college wide receiver at William and Mary. After he graduates, that's where his first coaching job is a linebacker coach for his alma mater. Then he goes to Penn State for a couple of years as a graduate assistant, which is kind of, everybody has to start somewhere, intern level, lower kind of level in the coaching tree where, that's where you're going to make your mark and try to work your way up. 2017, 2018, New Orleans Saints, offensive assistant, basically the same thing, but now on the NFL level. And I think kind of your job in these lower tier coaching jobs is do what you're told and learn as much as you can and do your job, whatever they're going to give you to do to the best of your ability. Cause you got to start turning some heads and go, okay, let's see what else he could do and your chance to move up the ranks. Apparently he did that on a lot of levels, and he definitely did it to the point where in 2019, he's named the passing game coordinator, wide receiver coach at LSU. And that's where he popped onto the national stage, obviously, because unbelievable team with probably still the best offense college football has ever seen. And he, as a refresher for those who were familiar in this area with it, and for those of y'all that may not have been because you're not particularly LSU fans, there was just a real symbiotic relationship going on with Steve Ensminger, who getting towards the end of his coaching career and looking towards retirement, which he did a few years later, and the up and coming young guy with the innovative offensive mind. And you had a meshing point there because the LSU offense definitely needed to be updated, a la ours needed to be updated last year from Pete Carmichael to what we're trying to do now. But you had a great relationship between the two. He helped develop the passing game, open up the offense, everything they wanted to do. And as Insminger said himself on a couple different interviews, he was able to translate that to me. Insminger, longtime coach, basically coached at every level up and down the offense, including offensive coordinator, years of experience, and has always been a really good schemer and play caller. Problem for him was the year before at LSU, it was an outdated scheme, and there was just no way you were going to be able to be very successful in it compared to what they were in 2019. So that mesh point worked great. They sat next to each other in the booth. There was a collaboration. Ultimately, Insminger had the final say on everything, but he was damn sure listening to the young hotshot sitting next to him who was coming up with some great ideas and could jump on the horn. If you've ever seen any videos of them from that season, definitely get on the headset and start talking down to not only his receivers, but other positions on the offense and help make some decisions. The good thing is he parlayed that into a lot of success because the national narrative in the media was it was all on him because that old man Insminger didn't know what he was doing, and this young guy had to bail him out. Insminger on his way to retirement, not ever really being a, you know, glory hog type guy, was perfectly okay with that narrative, didn't really care. And Brady certainly parlayed that immediately into an NFL paycheck, which is where his ambition was to go anyway. So I don't blame him one iota for jumping all over that. Even if the national media was having fun kind of expanding his role into something more than it actually was, it was still important to acknowledge that he did an awful lot in contribution to get that offense to where it was. And then disaster because offensive coordinator, that show in 2 years, it was actually a year and a half because he was fired halfway through 2021 in the Matt Rule era of Carolina, which case Carolina was kind of a shit show before they hired Matt Rule and thinking that, well, it can't possibly get worse. That was one thing Matt Rule did show him is, oh, yes, it can. Hold my beer, see what I can do. And this is where Brady's quote unquote resume gets a little muddled because he's fired halfway through the season in 2021 as an OC. Was it scapegoating? Because there was a lot of heat being felt, not only on the coaching staff, but in the front office for hiring these guys. Or was it warranted? Was he a real part of the issue and the problem going on there? I think it's a he said, she said, you kind of depending on who you want to believe. But either way, it wasn't very good for him. Put a lot of tarnish on his really and truly just 1 year in big time coaching, that 1 year at LSU where he got to a high level, intricate in scheming and offense and being involved in helping the play calling and everything. So now a lot of tarnish is off of him. So he doesn't even survive the second year. One thing, though, or actually two things, should mention. The second thing I'm going to bump up to first because it's very important. Best asset he had on that offense was, a guy named Christian McCaffrey, who played a total of 10 games in those 2 years. That was CMC after being healthy as a bug for the most of the beginning of his career. The injury issue started in 2020. He only played 3 games. 2021, he got up to 7. So basically, in that 32 games there, he played 10, played less than a third. That's going to, and when you have no real other talent around it and you're trying to rebuild, that's really going to hurt you. And it definitely hurt. It definitely hurt Joe Brady. There's no getting around it. The other thing is the fact that they were pretty much devoid of talent. What did he really have to work with? And what did he really know after really only 1 year of this um, major coaching job that he had in college at LSU that he could use to help fix and solve this? I always thought, even as he was getting fired, watching him going, this was just a case of a guy who was the hot name, the hot hire, and he was over his skis. He wasn't quite ready, didn't quite have enough experience to do what they were trying to get him to do. And that should be a warning to everyone when it comes to hiring coaches. Sometimes you got to take a chance on those young guys, but I think sometimes you got to look a little deeper and go, can he fix stuff if there's a problem? Or can he develop if we need him to develop some players who are not quite where they need to be, but yet they're going to have to play. That's an important question to ask if you're talking about whoever's going to be the new Saints head coach. He gets to Buffalo and a chance to redeem himself. And I think this is where things get really interesting because he's a quarterback coach for 2022 and 2023. But in addition, in 2023, he gets named the Bills' interim offensive coordinator because Ken Dorsey's fired. And if you remember last year, there was a lot going on with Josh Allen and Ken Dorsey publicly um, not well hidden that resembled a lot like the Derek Carr, Pete Carmichael relationship we saw publicly, and that was not well hidden that they weren't getting along. Difference was Buffalo realized if your quarterback and your OC are butting heads constantly, one of them's got to go. And so they fired Dorsey. Allen led kind of a little push to, hey, let's promote this Joe Brady guy for the end of 2023 and see what he can do. And what Brady basically did was one of the things that seemed to be an issue in that Buffalo offense was Dorsey was going pass heavy, especially pass heavy in Allen to Diggs, and was kind of forcing an offense. And Brady came in, made it more balanced, not only in the passing game, saying, look, we need to throw it around to everybody, but balance it in the running game, getting, guys like James Cook and Ty Johnson involved in 2023. Again, Josh Allen, who's one of the best running quarterbacks in the NFL, more involved in the running game also. Worked like a charm, kind of turned things around. Everybody was happy as clams with what he did in that half season. They promoted him to full-time in 2024. And I think this is where he's getting the momentum to start moving up those lists, because right now they're a top 10 offense. Clearly, if you watched them play at all, they're really good. I think they're third in scoring right now. They're, you look up and down, they don't really suck at any one thing, and they can put a lot of points on the board. They put a lot of pressure on you, and hell, they can even walk into a blizzard covered stadium and throw up a lot of offense. If you saw any part of the game the other night. So I can see where he's getting credit for this, and I can see where he's getting momentum and where his name's getting pushed up a lot of lists. Um, and it seems that this year, the reputation, again, referencing that SI article, that's why I wanted to mention it. But he basically had a blurb in there that, and this is kind of the things we wouldn't know if it's true, which he's printing it, so I'm hoping it is. But in this basically half season of 2023 where he walked in and we're making changes and we're going to make it work. And he did. And they did. And now he's almost a full season in, and really seeing the fact that he's kind of regained his reputation as a brilliant offensive mind, the one he came out of LSU with in 2019, of scheming, figuring stuff out, getting them, developing players. Because if you look at what they're doing this year, now look, Josh Allen's elite. There's no doubt about it. James Cook's probably their second most used weapon on offense. He's pretty good. But Diggs is gone, and they use guys like Khalil Shaker, the tight ends, Knox and Dalton. They use Ty Johnson, Ray Davis, a rookie in the receiving core. You also still have Curtis Samuel that's been around. They traded for Amari Cooper. They used a rookie Keon Coleman out of Florida State. You know, they may not have one super stud outside of Allen, but they have some good ball players, and they're developing young guys to step up and make some plays when they need them. May not be every game all game long, but they're going to show up here and there. They've kind of developed it through Allen and through the running game. And I could see where there's a lot of teams noticing that and going, maybe that guy kind of able to put it all together, learn not to do what Carolina, got in with a good organization like Buffalo. And as much as Dorsey was a problem, he's had success as offensive coordinator before. Learning under him, learning under the way McDermott runs the club, that could just very well be as simple as that, as why Joe Brady's gaining all this momentum. That's the best answer I can come up with on why he's first. Because I keep looking down that list and I'm thinking, if nothing else, Ben Johnson should be first on everybody's list. But yet, some kind of way, it is Joe Brady seems to be on the top of those lists right now. So what does this mean for the Saints? Look, I think there's a couple of things you do have to point out. Um, Really, two things that are very, very important in what Joe Brady has done from basically his coaching career started in 2019 and we're in 2024. And those two things are Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. And if you hire him as a head coach as the New Orleans Saints, he does not have a Joe Burrow or a Josh Allen currently on the roster to work with. Nothing even close to it. I think you have to keep that in mind. I don't know if we can get that type of quarterback yet. We'll see how everything shakes out, or if we're even going to bring Carr back and whatever's going to happen there. It's a lot of unknowns when it comes to that. For that reason, before I give you my complete take on Joe Brady, I think it's completely fair and appropriate to mention that as soon as that Chicago job opened up, I got into discussion with a couple guys on Twitter that nobody really disagreed with, going, that hurts us bad because that is a much more attractive job than a New Orleans job right now. When you're looking at the pieces, a coach like Brady or Ben Johnson going, shit, I'd rather deal with what they got going on over there. Plus, they still have some cap space and other stuff to work with, knowing that, well, they don't have an offensive line. We've got to rebuild that. Um, but a lot of other pieces on that offensive side. And we're we're definitely not that. So Brady is, I think, a guy, if you're the Saints, right now, I think he's shown enough. You've got to pull him in the office. He's got to be one of the guys where sit down, hard, honest assessment of what you've got there in the coach. Because I'm not saying he's on the short list to be hired, but I do believe he's on the list right now to bring in and have that conversation, hard conversation with, and give him the chance to show you how he's going to help turn this organization around. And I don't mean tell you about it in all flowery phrases. The guy better have a plan, walk into it. I don't care if he's got to do a PowerPoint presentation or what, but walk in there and wow the hell out of some people and go, this is how we're going to do it. And it kind of plays back into the very first segment when we're talking about the stuff every NFL coach needs to have before you decide if you're bringing in an X's and O guys on offense or defense or whatever you're going to do. So I don't mind Brady right now being on the short list and giving a serious interview. I just hesitant based on just a very limited resume. There's just not a lot of skins on that wall. And really his 2.5 years of success, 2019 LSU and kind of a year and a half, really kind of a year right now in Buffalo because he hasn't quite finished the season yet with Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. I'm going, that asterisk, I think, needs to accompany his resume. I think that needs to be acknowledged wherever he goes because it's looking like right now, if he is going to get a head coaching job in the NFL, unless Taylor gets fired in Cincinnati, which is possible. I think that's making some rumblings there. Then Joe Brady's not going to walk into a situation where he already has a Joe Burrow or a Josh Allen. And I think that's a very important thing to note. But it may not be a deal killer, but it could be, I guess. So it's kind of where we're sitting right now. I'm, just in a nutshell, I don't think you could put him as the favorite of listing those names. I think there's guys way further down the list that are probably, and when I get to do a deeper dive into them, I'll feel better about it. But this right now is just a gut feeling. There's guys further down that list that probably should be more of a front runner than Joe Brady. But again, what Brady has kind of redeemed his reputation and what he's doing in Buffalo, I think it's worth a conversation. So if you're if you're even thinking that if you're going to bring in 6 names, I'm thinking Brady might be the sixth, as I guess what I'm trying to say. So you agree with that? Give me the thumbs up. If you're new here, please like, share, subscribe, hit the notification so everybody know the black and gold community is growing, and we're gonna keep talking Saints, our favorite subject in the world. One thing talking about Let's Talk Saints. Don't forget Thursday live show be 2 p.m. Central. So make sure you hit your notification so you get the reminder when I'm popping on. And I'm pretty sure we're still going to be probably talking head coaching and probably some Tommy Cutlets. Who the hell's the other quarterback they're thinking about? Sir Drew Lock conversation and stuff about the Giants, because that might just be a fun, interesting conversation to start having on a Thursday afternoon. So till I see you next time, I'm Tim. Peace out and who dat.